There is a fancy term in the Bernina 880 that I love. It's called temporary altered stitch memory. Now that sounds fancy, but you know what? It is something that not many other machines have. Let me show you what it is. So we all know that everybody sews differently. You sew different than I do. I like my stitches to be bigger or shorter or maybe adjusted. We do so much with our Bernina Stitching Cosmos online course, that wonderful quilt that you see in the background with all those wonderful decorative stitches. So a lot of times when I'm sewing along, I will tweak a stitch. So I might take a straight stitch, and for a particular day or project, I might need that stitch length a little longer. So I've made it a little longer, and we see that the yellow numbers have become a different number because they're no longer on the default setting. So we're straight stitching, and now we need to go to a zigzag. Today's zigzag needs to actually be a little bit wider and a little closer together. So I'm sewing that. That's perfectly set up for my thread that I have in today. But now I need to go back to a straight stitch. On most machines, as soon as you leave this stitch, it will clear back to its default setting. But on a Bernina, when you touch stitch number 1, look, it's right where you left it. It's like if you have kids and you walk in a room and you put something down, when you come back to that room, you want it right where you left it. But with kids, they kind of sometimes change that feature for you. But on a Bernina, it is right where you left it. Now, I did say this was a temporary altered stitch memory feature. That does mean that anything that you do right now is going to be reset if you turn the machine off. But I'll teach you right now how you could set it or save it for tomorrow's project that you didn't finish today. Is you can go into every single stitch and override the default setting. Touch the eye, go back in and look at the bottom and find where the little picture of the floppy disk. That means that when you touch it, the setting of your length, your width, and your needle positions, and some of these functions as well, will be retained with that particular stitch. So that means when I turn it off and turn it on, it's going to come back to the stitch length of 3.35. My zigzag, if I want to save this, I could come into the information, for information, touch the save button, little picture of the floppy disk, and now that is my new default zigzag. I can do that for every single stitch within this machine. You can do it to decorative stitches. You can change up any of the stitch. Now, if you find yourself needing to go back to kind of where normal was, you can come in, take off what you've saved, touch the eye, and unsave it. That's the little picture of the floppy disk with the line through it. As soon as you touch it, it will go back to the machine's default setting. So isn't that wonderful? So usually, most of the time, I'm just happy with it's remembering where I was when I was sewing 2 minutes ago with that stitch and I had left it and came back. But if I do need to save it, I have that feature as well. I love that the Bernina 880 lets me do all these setting changes to every single stitch. There's no limits to a stitch. It doesn't max out at a length or width. I can pretty much turn any of these stitches into the way I want them to sew. And if I choose to, I can set them and save them for future use. So I hope you'll enjoy some of these features because, like I said, most brands do not have this particular feature of setting a stitch and then it remembers it while you're using a different stitch.